And this is Bloomberg. Francine and Tom?
Uma, thank you so much. Over the last number of days, various worthies have told all of America and indeed all of the world of George Herbert Walker Bush. We thought it was quite important to speak to people who were operative during the time of Bush and the Republican administrations afterwards. Diana Furchtgott-Roth joining us moments ago. This morning, Ron Bonjean says, you don't know him, but you should. Things get done in Washington, and they get done by people like Ron Bonjean. He works in the communications of message and has been exceptionally successful for various Republican projects. He is with Rock Solutions. And still with us, William Hoagland of the Bipartisan Policy Center, their senior vice president and truly expert on the nation's deficit in public service for Mr. Domenici of New Mexico, among others. Bill, I want to rip up the script here, if I may, and speak to a quiet morning yesterday where you attended the Rotunda. Tell all of our viewers worldwide the experience of going into the Rotunda and the privilege you had of going in with essentially no one there but you in a casket.
Well, thank you very much. That was a real honor for me. I had last been with the president about 4 years ago. I had been invited down to the library to discuss the 1990 budget agreement, which I was a staffer working with Senator Dole, Senator Mitchell, Tom Foley, Nick Brady, Dick Darman. And as I was waiting to get in, to appear on the stage, the president rolled up in his wheelchair and he pulled me on my sleeve and he says to me, Hoagland, you're responsible for me being a one-term president. And I said, largely because, of course, and he was kidding me, and it was always great to staff. He was fine to staff, even lowly staff like me. So, but it had to do with the fact that that budget agreement was the budget agreement in 1990 that I worked on with a number of members just as a staffer, and that created the famous violation of Read My Lips.
The imagery yesterday of a so fragile Senator Dole in the Capitol, really quite a moment in our history. Explain to our audience that hasn't studied it as you have and lived it as you have, this distinction between the senator from Kansas and the gentleman from Texas and Connecticut.
Well, of course, they're both same generations. They both...
but very different.
Very different. Senator Dole Senator Dole is and will continue to be one of the great leaders of our country, serving our country through what he went through. Tom, I think there are a lot of similarities, but as you say, they had different personalities. Right. I think Senator Dole had a little bit more of a spark to him, a little bit more of a edge to him at times, particularly during the campaigns. And President Bush was a little bit more laid back in terms of the approach that he took. But I still look at that as one of the great generations out there in the service they provided.
You've communicated the transfer of this, moving from the time of a Bill Hoagland and Mr. Dole and Mr. Bush to the modern Republican Party. Is the modern Republican Party at risk?
I don't think so. I think that they believe, every Republican believes in fiscal responsibility.
Yeah, but California is down to 25%, 26% registered voters. It used to be 29, and before that it was a little bit more in the time of Mr. Reagan.
Well, look, California is definitely an exception. And, in a midterm election, the party in power historically loses seats.
Sure, of course.
And often can lose one.
But it's still a victory for the president. I understand that. You communicated that message. But the state of the Republican Party right now, how are they doing?
I think the state of the Republican Party is strong. I mean, we still have the White House. We still have the Senate. We've done well in the Senate, and we've done well among state legislatures as well.
I've been dying to ask you this question. Do you need, as a Republican operative today, to get back the disaffected Republicans who have left the party because of the president?
What we need to be doing is focusing on a number of different types of Republican voters, female voters, for instance, and some across the United States that went to Democrats, that were in Clinton and Obama districts, so to speak, that we lost this time around. We really need to focus on
this. Is critical, Ron. I mean, David Wasserman over at Cook Political Report lays out the diversity of America, and it is a Democrat diversity. How does a Republican Party get back to the diversity represented by George Herbert Walker Bush and, frankly, by the direct Bush family as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. They need to start focusing focusing on the fundamentals that matter to Republicans, that matter to people across the country, opportunity. Republicans really drive opportunity in terms of giving wealth back to people, trying to create jobs, trying to create that opportunity. So
tell me about how you overlay this. And folks, I can't convey enough how Mr. Bonjean is knee-deep in the communication of messages. We're going into the National Cathedral today, and in there and over the last number of years, as many other places in America, has been a raging debate about what to do with memorials to the Confederacy, whether it's the window of Robert E. Lee or Stonewall Jackson, whatever those debates are. Forget about the niceties. How does a Republican Party get away from what is perceived as a polarized diversity, a polarized racism? How do they get away from that?
Well, they need to create a perception of inclusion. They need to show that they're inclusive, that they believe that everyone should belong to the Republican Party. I think that's really important to do. Absolutely. And can I just say about President Bush that, I first saw him and he came to my high school and campaigned for Ronald Reagan in '84. It was an amazing experience.
What was that like? Tell us,
Marquette University High School in Milwaukee. It was amazing. And he talked about the value of education. And we're an all-boys high school. Seeing a vice president come in, you can imagine he riled us all up. And he was the first president that I voted for in college. He was somebody that I grew up with, that I believed that he was basically a foundation that helped me with my career as I got into politics.
Bill Hoagland, too short a time I've got to run here, but just I have to ask this question. Do you have an optimism that Republicans can get back the moderate Republicans, the Rockefeller Republicans of another time?
And the George Bush Republicans? I think so. I think the long term, I think we'll be able to come back together.
Okay. Wonderful, gentlemen. Bill Hoagland with us, Bipartisan Policy, Senator Ron Bonjean. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for being with us on this early morning in Washington. We've got much more to come. An important discussion, the doctorate from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Nigel Wilson. He is Legal and General Chief Executive Officer, and he is exceptionally astute about the dynamics of his disunited kingdom. Nigel Wilson coming up next. Please stay with us from Washington, from London.